Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar titled Unlocking the Potential for Supply Chain Network today. Let me start by a quick introduction. Let me introduce myself. My name is Krishna Khandelwal, and I take care of entire business for locals globally. But most importantly, let me introduce Mehul. Mehul heads category strategy and GTM at VGuard. VGuard is valued over $1 billion in valuation, listed on Indian stock exchanges, and one of the biggest electrical appliances manufacturers. Mehul, you want to quickly say hi and introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you so much, Krishna, for inviting me. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon for the people from different geographies. Been in this field for some years now, and more than me, I think today it's important to talk about the network optimization. So I'm really looking forward for an engaging conversation.
Thanks, Mehul, for joining in. Really appreciate you taking time out to discuss about this topic.
Yeah.
So for the participants, I just wanted to kind of run through the agenda so that they're aware of what will be covered in the webinar today. We'll broadly be covering on the current state of affairs in supply chain, what is changing, what according to us is network optimization, what is the design and the requirement for supply chain network optimization, what is the approach one should take towards this, and of course we'll have question and answer sessions after this. We're practically expecting it to be somewhere about 35 to 40 minutes long session, but we have a 10 minutes buffer towards the end in case if the Q&A round, etc., kind of extends further. So let's kick start, right? Over the last few years, our interactions with enterprises across regions, across industries, across companies with turnovers ranging from few millions of dollars to few billions of dollars, this statement kind of sums up the state of affairs. The supply chains of today are perfectly suited to the needs of businesses 20 years ago, right? But what is most surprising is that everybody seems to know this. Everybody seems to agree that the supply chains are built for their business situation a couple of decades back. But when we ask them what is the most important and most critical components which they want to focus in the supply chain, this pretty much sums up on what ranks for them. Mehul, I would love to kind of invite you in and get to know your thoughts on what are those top 5 to 6 components of supply chain which are playing on supply chain heads' minds always.
No, sure, Krishna, and actually, if you look at these variables, I'm sure everyone who's in supply chain is gonna even put a hand on the heart, is gonna say yes, these are the challenges which we face. But what is more important is that all of these seems to be interlinked. If you think about it, you can't do a cost cutting on a transportation and at the same time, not think about customer service. You talk about some kind of a business process improvement without talking about inventory management. My broader point being, all of these should be seen together. I think there's a coherent view on working on one and working on all. And especially, in today's VUCA world, the complexities, the ambiguity, and the volatility, it's sky high. And, I'm pretty sure if we look at this graph, even 5 years down the line, the percentages may change, but all these parameters put together will be still very critical and very relevant.
Yeah. One of the takeaways from what you just mentioned was all of these things need to be kind of solved together. And I think that pretty much might be the reason why the supply chain network design or changes in supply chain, it doesn't reflect because all of this has to be solved simultaneously rather than sequentially. Would that be a fair statement to say?
Absolutely. If we try and solve one, we will end up being in a position where we solve a problem right now, but we're creating a problem for future again. So you are
Yeah,
absolutely right, Krishna, that all of these have to be addressed together. And I think uh, that's pretty much, I think, what most of the organizations at least intend to do. From a strategy point of view, I don't think there should be anything different on those lines.
absolutely. And I think to add on top of the state of affairs, right? I think everybody who is participating today kind of would agree that supply chains are evolving.
Mm.
Fulfillment is no longer just a cost center. I mean, we all know Amazon's and how fulfillment has been the biggest differentiation for them, right? But coming from you leading category strategy, um, what according to you is fundamentally changing, which is making supply chains all the more important every single passing month, quarter, and year?
True, and no, absolutely. I think if you think about it, right, we compete in 16 product categories today, market leader in a couple of them, and we're knocking on doors for others. But if you think about it, across the top 4 or 5 brands, and I'm sure this is applicable either in FMCG, liquor, or even for any other business for that matter, the from a quality, from a service point of view, the points are no longer a point of differentiation. They are now points of parity. You need to have the bare minimum customer satisfaction because the choices are so many. And this is not the only thing which works, right? Think about this environment where today's customer has multiple platforms to buy from, multiple platforms to
Yeah,
select from. Omni-channel, is a must now in today's world. So if you think about it, all these just puts tremendous pressure on the products and the product life cycle. I think we can keep talking about introducing new product, but if it doesn't reach my target segment at the right place at the right time, I am not. I'm talking about losing market share in a matter of days. And think about it when you have a traditional trade, a modern trade, e-commerce, and now there's a B2T. uh, these things essentially means that everybody needs stock at the right point of time. And I can only sympathize and imagine how much demand planning has become so critical in this world. I mean, even in our organization, if you think about it, this one process which has evolved so much over the last 4 or 5 years is demand planning. We're looking at multitude of internal, external data so that we can get closer. And the sole purpose of that is to do fulfillment, 100% on-time
yeah.
fulfillment every time. So absolutely, tremendous pressure on supply chain in today's world.
And I think it's kind of surreal for a person at Locus to hear that, because when we started 5 years back, 6 years back, we could not see this excitement towards supply chain as a function. Uh, how has that happened towards in VGuard on? We would love to understand the gradual process on how supply chain, which was always more of things behind the scenes, suddenly now we're talking about supply chains impacting market share.
No, sure.
Would love to understand your thought on how the journey kind of happened.
Yeah, no. If you look at Viga, I think we started working on our back end process probably from the day we started. Our chairman, when it started in late 1970s, has been a strong proponent of a brand, and brand doesn't just means about what it stands for in terms of fancy ads or fancy statements. It's also about service. It's also about product. And most importantly, this all will fall if the product is not available when you want to buy it. Who fulfills
Yeah,
all this? It's a supply chain, right? We have undertaken multitude of projects internally, and in fact, as a matter of fact, we are still working on it even today to streamline our back-end operations. Our complete cost reduction is the holy grail that we keep chasing every year, and we feel that there's still some more that we can chase. I think supply chain is where the balance comes in. It's just not about cost reduction. It's primarily about optimization, and which is where even we are working with Locus today. And I'm proud to say that there are elements which we have thought about but could not quantify has come into perspective, which are now ready to be actioned. So definitely.
No, so excited to hear that. And with that, let's try to kind of look at the mathematical part of it.
Mhm.
I think this statement sums it up really well. Most of the supply chain have never been subject to a design process. We have seen head of sales, head of supply chain, CXs across large enterprises. The cost is predetermined in the design of product and supply chain network. I would love to understand how is that possible with so many variables. I mean, just look at it, the journey of a shipment from your supplier to your customer, the amount of parameters which are at play over here. How would approximations and assumptions would even work? And why is that people have not kind of gone ahead and realized this? And what prompted you guys to do this? I mean, you guys would have realized this, and that's why the whole act of network optimization you guys picked up. Some thoughts
Sure.
on that, Mehul?
No, absolutely. I think just for the audience who've joined us today, to give some numbers in perspective, right, and to get how this design or this complex design or the graph right now would make sense. Uh, we have more than 1,500 active SKUs. This gets manufactured across 13 different locations, gets shipped to 38 different touch points, and from where it goes to our almost 45,000 plus primary channel partners, via which it reaches to consumers. All this, if we think about it, saying that, let me take a guesstimate work, uh, there are multitude of issues that we have seen in the past, and I'm sure, be it any other company, whether it is an FMCG again or even for that matter pharma, would come up and say that the route optimization is most important. I mean, given take an example of sales. I have sales beats. I have even the sales. The planning from every store happens. How can you not plan how the delivery to these stores will happen? I think whether you do it full truckload, whether you do a milk run, I just find that the design is where the heart of the challenge lies. And trust me, this number is only going to increase. It's not going to come down. The complexity is only going to go up. The number of touch points are going to go up. If you don't start now, I'm afraid you will always be playing a catch-up game. Uh, that was our single premise why we wanted to design and map out how do we reach the right place at the right time again.
Absolutely. And I think with the increasing commoditization across many industries, whether it's electric appliances or it's FMCG, margins are constantly under pressure, right? I mean, we really need to look at nooks and crannies in your supply chain to find value. Every 1-2% gives you that advantage to get your additional market share. And I think this process is becoming all the more important with this increasing commoditization of industries across the world. I don't think so. It's geography dependent or sector dependent or region dependent.
No,
So I
absolutely.
completely agree with you, and it's going to become more and more complex as we go forward.
Yeah, and actually, Krishna, if you think about it, and you guys may be better judge here, but if you look at the average costs across industries on the transportation alone, For a company which is of closer to $500 million turnover, or more than that, uh, even a 0.3% improvement on my bottom line helps me unlock
Yeah,
another 2% on the top line. So, talking about the benefits, I'm pretty sure there is a lot of merit in looking at the network design in the first place.
absolutely. So let's kind of go dive into the topic on what is network optimization.
Mhm.
Essentially, it's a modeling and analysis of your supply chain network using advanced learning techniques for building contextual understanding. And this is how Locus looks at network optimization. We can broadly divide network optimization into four categories. First one related to flow of your products, which has everything to do with transportation, lane optimization, or logistics optimization. The second component being location intelligence, which essentially means are your supply chain nodes in right place or not. Third component being a very critical one these days is around inventory management. Um, how should you go about multi-echelon inventory placement? And the strategic sourcing, given your vendor and supplier network, how should you optimize your procurement costs? Um, Very interesting, this slide, right? So we believe it could be done at three levels. And of course, if you look at the slide, the first level is just a physical flow optimization, where your supply chain nodes are static. And what you are trying to optimize is mapping across these different nodes, and your transportation is optimized. What is changing in this is your sourcing and value chain. If I add another level of complexity to it, along with flow optimization, you try to do location optimization. And the change between first level and second level is that your supply chain nodes are not fixed. And what changes in this is your sourcing and value chain, but also your warehouse consolidation. And the last bit, which is inventory optimization, gets added to the second level, right? And what essentially we are changing in that is everything from location, mapping, inventory, what should be your inventory approach, and everything from sourcing, value chain, warehouse consolidation to inventories at different nodes in your supply chain changes. One very critical thing, which I think I would want Mehul to kind of comment on, is there like a thumb rule or a way for people to figure out which level of network optimization makes sense for them? Is it dependent on turnover, number of SKUs, complexities of a supply chain? Would it be kind of easy for you to break it down? I know it's not an easy question, but I would love some thoughts on how can participants on this call kind of decide what level of network optimization they should go for?
Yeah. No, Krishna, by the way, you promised no difficult questions. So, but no, that on a
We
lighter
love
note.
putting people on spot.
No, I think, to be honest, see, there cannot be a simple answer to this. And for the single reason that, companies, if you look at from a turnover point of view, whether you look at from their geographic spread point of view, or even if you look at their nature of business, which means what is the cyclicity of the business that they are involved in. For example, we have summer products, we have winter products. It cannot be said that one should pick up one answer, or it should only do physical flow optimization, or should look at physical plus location. For the simple reason being that at different stage of your journey you would want to focus at different points. Now, for example, if you think about it, people may want to start with physical flow optimization, but this goes back to the very first chart that we were talking about. But no one thing would go together, right? The moment you start your physical flow optimization, you will realize that maybe my warehouses are not located at the place where they should have been, and hence I'm incurring an extra cost. And then when you start to look at that, you realize that, oh, you know what? By the way, I should have also looked at the inventory, because the moment I work on these two, there's going to be a direct impact on inventory. And especially today, again, in the multitude of the world that we live in, if we can unlock even 1, 2, 3 days of average inventory holding, imagine how much liquidity and fluidity it brings to the business. So my humble submission here is that it all depends on every business. I think the journey may start from one, but I'm pretty sure the journey will only end when pretty much they have done all the three. So it's just a question of when and not if.
Awesome. I mean, very interesting way to look at it. If we kind of look at the kind of questions most of the partners at Locus would ask is there a way for us to figure out what is most important for them? I mean, but I guess you can start from one, but we know for a fact that you have to go through all these three levels to finally get that full value unlock in your supply chain.
Absolutely.
This is, I believe, the most important and probably most surprising thing for people on the webinar today. Do you find it surprising that people don't do their cost to serve analysis? I mean, it sounds very counterintuitive to me on why would people not do this given how critical this is.
No, I am not surprised at all. Had this not come up, I would have been surprised. I think cost to serve is uh, is is one element which today pretty much in every CXO's mind would be running. And again, for a simple reason, uh, if you think about, as I said, right, take any top three brands, you will on a product front, you will not find problems. All of them are doing absolutely great. What makes them separate, right? It's either at a brand that you create or either the way you compete with the other players in the market. And cost to serve is the single most important reason. I am sure, in all the past experience on the consulting side as well, uh, the if you look at the top 100 companies in India, most of them may have unbelievable data systems, very good cadence to capture and review this data. But how many of them would have a system to look at both supply chain cost along with the sales cost, right? Cost to serve brings that into picture. It's just not about how much margin I'm giving to the distributor. It's also about what are my fulfillment costs, what are my returns, what is my service cost going to be if I start putting up a center at a new location. I think my read is that in the coming years, if not already, this would become one of the most important and distinguishing factor between different companies and how they operate in the market.
I'm actually, to be frank, like, so I heard a couple of important points, right? So one is you said that it's actually not the intent problem, which kind of makes sense. The second one is there is an improvement in the way people are collecting data, but the supply chains and sales and procurement is not talking to each other, which kind of makes it difficult for us to do cost to serve analysis. If
Sure.
if I sum up every single partner at Locus, 100 plus across different geographies, we have seen that 90% of the CXOs of these companies don't know what their actual cost to serve is. And it's definitely not the intent problem, but it's more of the how should we go about it? How do we get that last mile data from the retailer, from the distributor, tie it up with my transportation cost? And I hope digitization reaches a stage where it's spanning across different legs of supply chain, different legs of your value chain. You kind of achieve this because for me, intuitively, this should be the biggest focus area for every CXO, for every strategy person, for every supply chain person to be able to drive the business effectively.
Absolutely. Um, I think the more we can continue to talk on the cost to serve for quite a long time, but yes, I think all said and done, that's something where the data and the insight becomes very important. You may have the data, but if you don't have insight, then
Yeah,
it just doesn't help.
absolutely. And I think we've seen that we don't know the reason for this. It might be because of it's difficult to model, it's difficult to factor these things. But these are some of the common supply chain variables we see people have overlooked in past. They don't really focus on it still today. And I think companies are involved in merger and acquisitions activities, downsizing, divesting, and because of the supply chain, entities and elements start varying quite a lot. Inventory levels are skyrocketing. 40% of your capital is logged in inventory. Service levels are shrinking. I mean, you talked about how important it is to get the product on right time to right customer, increasing commoditization because of increasing competition, leading to loss of sales. Service level becomes extremely important. Shrinking margins and increasing cost, of course, which is operational cost, but not considering special projects when we're talking about cost part. Not looking at multi-fulfillment channels. You talked about omni-channel, e-commerce, very different operating models coming in terms of fulfillment to your end customer, and not able to accommodate these multiple fulfillment channels, which kind of requires a supply chain flexibility or agility, is typically overlooked, right? And the fact that when you're expanding it to a newer markets, right, I think the approach is very experimentative in nature. We believe that that variable should also be modeled in what your growth looks like, what geographies you're expanding to, what kind of products you'll be launching over there. I think these are some of the common variables which we believe people typically overlook in the supply chain network design. Would you agree with this? Would you want to add some variables which you think typically are overlooked by larger enterprises when they're thinking of supply chain network design?
No, I think this pretty much captures most of the sense. I think, we also looked at it a few years ago. And I think a couple of external factors which impacted from then to now is, for everyone would understand about the GST, the goods and services tax. I think what it has done is that it has made the entire country now a contiguous land rather than another 29 states, 7 union territories put together, right? Uh, Last time when we did this project, we were more looking about how do we ensure that each state suffices the requirement that are meant. But now it has completely changed, and the way the external environment impacts. Sometimes it can overpower even most of the internal elements that you would want to predict, model, control. I think those things which you really can't control much, and the only way you should look at it is that there are more windows of opportunity where you can streamline, you can make your supply chain more efficient. uh, I think those would be particularly one or two points which
Absolutely, yeah.
should be looked at.
Yeah. And I mean, so the idea behind putting this over here is not to kind of walk you through each of those components, but to give an idea on why some of those variables get overlooked, because it is a complex problem, right? I mean, there are so many parameters we need to model. There are so many criterias. Assumptions keep changing. Scenarios keep changing. And that brings us to the whole approach to network optimization. I think it's kind of common misconception that it's only can be solved by a complex mathematical modeling. What we realize is that either we rely too much on human intuition or we rely too much on complex mathematical modeling. But it's actually some of both of these. And thanks to some of the techniques like artificial intelligence available now, where there is a smarter way to incorporate human intuition, knowledge, supply chain expertise is what we call, into the complex mathematical modeling, is what essentially leads to a contextual, optimal network design solution, which kind of brings us to a little bit of more technicalities of network optimization, right? And I think when we talk about network optimization, some of the examples of problem statements, and the way we use problem statement, you can imagine how geeky the data science approach we have towards locals. But this kind of sums up. But some of the most important and critical problem statements we have seen is whether it's reduction of total landed cost, how to source and where to source from, your location intelligence, which is around your either around warehouse expansion or warehouse consolidation, and the other one is inventory planning, right? Which is primarily becoming more and more critical because of the multiple channels of fulfillment coming in. But if we sum up all of these problem statements, we believe these four components kind of sums up the whole approach towards network optimization, right? And I know, Mehul, you have a very interesting view towards digital twin. So I'm going to come to that. But
Sure.
along with digital twin, we have realized for a fast growing business in the scenarios which is changing, we all know trade wars happening, tariffs changing, taxation structures changing. What is more important is also that you need to know how agile is your supply chain to different scenarios which might come in. What kind of sensitivity do you have to various parameters, whether it's fuel cost, transportation cost, manufacturing cost of raw materials, right? And most important, definitely something which data science brings on the table is how does your constraint work with each other? What constraint impact what part of a supply chain? Given larger organization with such a fragmented, distributed infrastructure, so many constraints are at play, and not knowing what each of those constraints can lead to, what changes in your supply chain, your SLAs, your cost, is going to be quite detrimental according to us in the overall network design approach. Now, if I talk about the whole approach towards network optimization, if I have to sum it up, right, finding an optimal solution using mathematics is one thing, but we talked about how human intelligence, how supply chain expertise plays a very great role, a very important role in finding a contextual solution, right? And the flow of that, according to us, should look like that you have beautiful mathematical models taking into account multiple constraints, multiple parameters. They are subjected to on-ground feasibility. They are subjected to validation of the supply chain expertise which sits in your organization. We do a reiteration, and that is how the contextual solution comes out. Right? Now, it sounds very theoretical in terms of approach, but the idea is with the advent of techniques like machine learning, learning constantly from what is happening on the ground is what essentially makes this contextual solution a reality. Now, I know that I want to invite Mehul to talk about digital twin and the importance of this. To be frank, I think Mehul, we know your views about your and your CEO's view about digital twin. We would love if you kind of share on why is it so important for you? What do you mean by digital twin, and what did you kind of end up achieving with this?
No, sure. So let me actually put a question to all the audience who's there, and I know if there's a poll that can be done. How many of us who's either in supply chain one way or the other actually know how much is the cost? I'm not looking at the total, but how can a lot of people come back and say with confidence that I know that my this factory is going to incur this cost, or my this product category is going to incur this cost? I think to just give some perspective, right? And with all due respect, we have 16,000 trucks which move a year. These are, your 14 feet, 32, 40, sorry, pardon me, 14 ton, 32 feet trucks. Now, coming from a sales background, I can tell you nothing is more important in the last 3 days than taking orders. And we all would have gone through it in some way or the other. Now, at that point of time, I'm only looking at what is going to be, can I take an order and I'll worry about fulfillment later. But when you actually sit back and look at the end of the month, that have I actually made money, or have I actually serviced the demand, or have I just added on to my network cost? Digital twin, and I've mentioned this before, and I will continue to do this in future, is the single source which helped us understand, what you guys can really potentially really put on the table, right? I think, as you said, and again, with all due humility, all the earlier slides were a lot of contextual, technical elements, but this is the first time when you start to see that what is happening to my network. And I am pretty sure if all of us plot our network today on this, it would look like pretty much what is there on the left, or it may look like a complete mesh where you may have more yellow lines than you can see black path. And I'll tell you what, right? This doesn't the different companies, different individuals can use this in different manner. But if you ask us today, we are looking at a digital twin not only from a supply chain optimization, but even there are multitude of benefits. I possibly can see the black areas here today, and I know that I don't have a partner in that market. If I use my predictive techniques to understand what is the market potential of that area, I have now started to build that what my tomorrow's future network should look like, because sooner than later I am going to tap into that market, right? That's where the entire AI part, the entire machine learning part becomes so important. And again, we have heard about AI possibly pretty much every alternate day, or every day in a newspaper you will have one article on it. But do all of us can relate to it in our day-to-day world and see how it is going to make a difference, right? Um, Again, I will just sum it up looking at the clock as well, that digital twin is the single reason why we feel, has opened up our eyes to what is exactly happening. And an ability to do this regularly is something I believe is of enormous value to us, at least, right? Um,
Yeah.
that's uh, that's
No,
that's my 2 cents on digital twin, Krishna.
no, but thank you for putting it this way, right? I think we ourselves are realizing over the last few quarters that once you have a digital twin of your supply chain modeled and designed, and overlay that with how that changes when you change constraints, parameters, scenarios, finding sensitivities, right?
Mhm.
Having that visual representation of what it looks like, no matter how trivial it might sound, but that visual representation is what kind of gives you a good feel of if you are doing a right job or not, if an activity like network design is actually helping you or not. Because if you look at it, look at the left hand side, it's a completely messed up scenario where products are going from north to south to west. And then you have a brownfield scenario, which is a realistic scenario where we pick up your real business scenarios, real world situation, and we can see just a dramatic improvement in both the scenarios. And I think that itself should give you a good idea of what the concept of digital twin and the impact of supply chain design can have on your entire network.
Yeah.
Now, just to sum it up, in the interest of time, we discussed a lot of approaches and the whole approach towards network optimization and bringing in context, supply chain expertise, and using some of the advanced techniques to do that. We went through this engagement couple of months back, right? It was for one of the largest agri equipment manufacturers. It was the level 2 of network optimization, flow optimization, as well as location intelligence, right? And we were surprised by the kind of value we were able to unlock. This was in the post taxation regime change in India. and about 21% of logistics costs got unlocked because of the network design process, right? And what Mehul mentioned about digital twin, as you can see over here, which is as is versus optimized, was kind of gave them an idea of how was their supply chain before and what kind of happened to that after all the real world scenarios were considered and optimization was done on top of it. So that's, I believe, the good way to sum up on how that approach we discussed today kind of get materialized in reality. We would actually love to, Mehul, if you have some last thoughts, we would love to have that, and then we can move on to the Q&A post that.
No, I think pretty much we spoke about a lot of elements, starting from why the supply chain is complex to how to look at it in a very simple manner. I think it's pretty well covered, Krishna.
Awesome. So I think just wanted to make an announcement in case you have Q&As. There's a questions tab on the right hand side. You can put your questions over there, and we will keep picking up these questions. And either Mehul or I will pick up these questions, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So there's a question which has been asked by one of the participants that the value chain in agri industry is not optimized still. What will be your thought on that? Mehul, from your consulting days, have you ever worked in agri industry? Probably want to take a shot at it.
No, I think if you're talking about an equipment manufacturer or, for that matter, seeds, right? I think the problem could lie very differently in both the sides. But let me take the difficult one first, right? If it's about seeds, it's about fertilizers. I think the problem is never too big or never too small to start off. I think one should just believe that a simple question, right? If you can come back and answer after the end of the month that how much of my route transfers or stock transfers have resulted, whether in net benefit or positive, and you think that's the optimized, then it's all good. If not, then the question should be again, when do you need to start on this? And then compared to, say, take the other extreme of auto, equipment manufacturers in case of agri, I think it's just a question of, again, why not? My read is that maybe because of the ticket size or the equipment cost per unit cost may be higher, you may not transfer that as fast as you want. But again, at the same time, it is very important to understand that data should be related along with the sales, right? Which is where the true power of it will start to come out, right? As I said, modeling is all about historical data. AI, machine learning is all about future predictability, right? That probably is, my my best attempt at the question. I don't know if Rahul Kumar, I think, if he is satisfied with the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Krishna, you can add some more thoughts, considering you have a wider spread of clients as well.
Yeah. So I'm very transparent. I mean, in terms of agri industry, specifically in India, one of the biggest challenges we have had around is availability of data. Sorry, structured data, label data, because I think that's one of the first starting points for any network design activity. And the opaqueness which exists in different legs of supply chain in agri industry. I mean, for us to do this engagement, the amount of data collection, assumptions we had to kind of go through to even start this was one of the biggest challenge for us when we did the equipment manufacturer network design. I think there's another question which is,
Uh, there's another question around the data preparedness in terms of engagement for the network optimization activity. So maybe let me pick this one, and I would love
Sure.
to hear you on what you kind of went through to be ready for this. Um, I think it depends on geographies, territories, at least in local experience across the world, where we have.
um, where we realize that integrating with multiple supply chain systems
To even get a labeled data set, and the
and
fact that a lot of systems still depend on manual intervention in terms of data entry. There is no reliability on the data. I think larger organizations have to really go throughout designing SOPs and processes, and to be very frank, incentivization for people to be able to collect data, accurate data, because without that, I think starting all of this, whether it's digital twin, network design, constraints modeling, sensitivity analysis, all of that would just be theoretical if the data itself is not labeled. Mehul, how did you guys go about to be ready for network design? What was your thought process? Was it a longer process to even reach that stage?
Sure. No, I think to be honest, post GST, right? We haven't looked at our network at all, and we believe there is. We always, we have done some back of the envelope calculations, uh, which came out in a range of our savings, and we said that what, let's do a very good deep dive into this because, to be honest, that kind of processing capability, that kind of supply chain understanding, which thankfully I can say Locus brought about, was very sure. We were very sure of going into this is going to help us unlock some more fuel for our future growth. Um, that's how we started looking at this. I think the other part of the question was the time horizon, right? Um, I
yeah.
think they, again, another difficult question for the day. But to be honest, Ram, if I can call you that, it's the simple answer to that is that you start at one point of time, right? You start and then you realize that what you have designed may be very efficient for next 2 years, and because there is a predictive or a very clear way of modeling which even erstwhile exists, you will start to realize that what worked in 2 years ago or 3 years ago may not work anymore. So putting a typical number of years may be a little challenging. It would be like looking into the crystal ball and gazing, saying how the world is going to change in 2 3 years. But my read is that in a market like India, if we set up a network infrastructure now, unless and until the type of the business, no big M&A is happening, the network once optimized should suffice you for at least 2 to 3 years.
And do you think so? Just on a follow-up question from my side, Mehul,
Mhm.
once you do this activity, once you have gone ahead and designed your entire network and the kind of preparation which has to go in terms of data preparedness and the intent as well from the management, once
Mhm.
you do this, is it easy to kind of do it again when the things are changing? What's your experience on in that direction?
No, absolutely. I think once bitten is not twice shy anymore. It's actually that you are in a much better position to comprehend, to appreciate, and be better prepared. No doubt, even for us, and I'm sure you and your team would be aware, Krishna. We said we took a month. We said we wanted to take a month first, just to get the data in place, right? And thankfully, a lot of our so-called unstructured data, you guys were able to structure it as well. So I think it is important that one has a realistic expectations as well in terms of timelines. But yes, from an approach point of view, at least for us, we started with internal planning first. What helped was a very clear understanding of what data we can provide, and then to collect it across these multitude of our touch points, sales points, was a matter of time because all of this data was in the system, right? I think it was just about pulling and putting it together, and then you guys did what you guys do best. The magic of digital twin was out.
Awesome. And I think we have a very interesting question from Surabhi, and I'm going to add my question on top of it. GST is
Sure.
considered to be beneficial for businesses, right?
Mhm.
There has been a lot of discussions and debate on impact of GST on logistics costs and the broader supply chain strategy, right?
Mhm.
And I personally seen some of the industries actually gone the other way around, where their logistics supply chain costs actually increased, and for varied of reasons, and
Yeah.
could be related to sales, increasing competition, market share. But how would you define the broader impact of GST on the supply chain strategy for a larger organization such as yourself?
No, I think we definitely think it was a positive change. Purely from the fact of what I mentioned earlier as well. To look at India as one contiguous land was very important. How it is impacting us now and in future, I think erstwhile a lot of our transportation costs we have spoken about a lot in this. Imagine even as we are setting up our new manufacturing plants, and as we as any other organization will continue to do in future as well. It has now become of a paramount importance of where are my consumption centers, where are my demand centers, and where am I going to set up my new factory, right? I cannot anymore set up a factory in one part of the country and ship the goods to the other part of the country just because I have a tax break there, right? Now, because of GST, the transportations, the movement is absolutely, much better than what it was earlier. So I think the question on the overall SCM strategy, yes, cost may be the first or the low-hanging fruit as we used to call it, but there are much far-reaching impact on the overall SCM plan itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Mehul, for answering that. So we'll take one more questions. It's around how multimodal transportation kind of can be handled, right?
Mhm.
And to that, I mean, we will of course have it answered separately as well. But to for the broader audience, I mean, when you're looking at international supply chains, specifically around apparels or heavy engineering goods, where you're procuring goods from vendors and suppliers from different countries, and consumption of those goods is happening, or the retailing of those goods is happening in different countries. The modes of transportation plays a great role, as you saw that the transportation cost one of the biggest focus areas in terms of design.
Hi,
Sorry, I
can
got
you
cut
hear
cut
me?
off. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So I
I
think
think
handling
multimodal
multimodal
transport.
transport, whether it's air or it's related to fuel cost or kind of taking it together along with the service level standards. I mean, it's very kind of common to understand that air traffic or air as a way, a mode of transportation, faster in terms of delivery, extremely expensive versus sea freight, ocean freight, which is of course cheaper but comes with higher SLAs to your customers. It's kind of handled along with the entire network design, where multimodal transportation becomes one of the key core components in terms of the output on what mode of transportation should be used between two nodes of your supply chain. I'm not sure if that kind of answers your question, but will be, I mean, somebody from our team will kind of reach out to you and help you out in understanding how um, that can happen, right? So I think we're running out of time. Just 3 minutes into. I do want to thank Mehul. Thank you so much for your time.
I hope it was a good session. Thank you for sharing your experience.
We
We
learned and
learned
we learned as
as
well.
well. And I hope it was good for participants. Would you want to have any last words for folks who have joined webinar today on um, like what should be the advice from your side to these guys?
No, I think first of all, thank you, Krishna, you and to the entire team, for everyone who's even behind the scenes, for putting all of this together. Big, show call out to all you guys. I think as such message to people on the on the on the webinar. I think heartfelt gratitude and thank you for being patient and hearing. But yeah, I think most importantly, my only point would be is that don't look at the supply chain as a cost center anymore. It's not that. It's about creating a competitive advantage, and how best to build on it and how much to build on it will depend on every organization. So that's pretty much I would like to leave the audience with.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that advice, and thank you everyone for joining in. A couple of announcements. So the deck and the recording of the webinar will be shared with all of the participants, right? And we will have some of the contact details, and Mehul kind of agreed to have his contact details over here in case people want to reach out to him. Um, uh, and if he can spare some time, I would love to help you out as well in case you guys are struggling with something in terms of strategy. And outside of that, the content which was shared today, as well as the recording of this, will be shared. Thank you so much for joining in. I know for some of the participants, it's pretty late who are joining us from Southeast Asia and India. Once again, really appreciate your time. Thank you for hearing us out, and we hope it was useful for everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mehul, once again.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thank you.